Hello there, and welcome to Hypersleep Voyager. Tonight, we turn our internal gaze toward a white silence that once held the Earth in its majestic, quiet grip. It is a vast, frozen memory that still lies just beneath our feet, an overlooked kingdom of moving glaciers and ancient giants that carve the very landscapes we walk upon today. It is a time when the world slept under a heavy blanket of stars and frost, hidden from our modern view but ever present in the deep history of the soil. We are going to drift back across the millennia, wandering slowly through this crystalline world to uncover the peaceful mysteries resting within the ice. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, feel free to like and subscribe. It helps others find their way here too. Before we step into the snow, take a moment to find your center. Feel the weight of the day simply dissolve. Drop your shoulders away from your ears and let your hands rest loosely. Unclench your jaw, parting your teeth slightly, and allow a slow, steady breath to fill your chest. As you exhale, let your eyes grow heavy, inviting a deep, restorative darkness to wash over you. Let us begin. Glacial sheets once covered nearly a third of the entire planet's surface. This vast, frozen mantle transformed the known world into a sanctuary of absolute stillness, where the usual restless noise of life was muffled under miles of compacted, ancient snow. Imagine standing before a wall of ice that stretches higher than the lowest clouds, a sheer cliff of translucent deep blue and white that seems to glow with a quiet, inner luminescence under the pale, distant sun. The air is crisp and pure, filling your lungs with a cold clarity, while the ground beneath you vibrates imperceptibly with the slow, rhythmic grinding of the glaciers advance. There is no hurry here, only the patient, eternal march of the frozen water as it sculpts the mountains in total silence, smoothing the rough edges of the earth. It is a humbling reminder that nature operates on a timeline far grander and more peaceful than our own rushing moments, holding the world in a cold, safe embrace that endures for eons. Lower sea levels reveal the bridge connecting the vast and distant worlds. As the ocean retreated into the polar caps, a silent, grassy corridor emerged from the depths, offering safe passage across what is now a restless sea. Picture a wide, wind-swept plain stretching infinitely toward the horizon, where the sky meets the earth in a seamless gradient of soft grays and muted greens. Great herds of woolly giants drift slowly across this temporary earth, their heavy footsteps muffled by the thick Dunga moss that blankets the ground. The wind whispers secrets through the tall grasses, carrying the scent of snow and ancient soil, guiding these wanderers toward a new home. It is a world suspended in time, a hidden kingdom where the path forward is revealed only to those who are patient enough to walk it. This reminds us that even when oceans seem to divide us, there are always hidden foundations waiting to rise and connect us in the most unexpected and quiet ways. Giants walk the earth wrapped in layers of thick, protective warmth. These magnificent creatures moved with a gentle, lumbering grace, perfectly designed to thrive within the sharp chill of the Ice Age winter. Imagine standing near one of these peaceful titans, close enough to see the coarse texture of its long, shaggy coat, which sways rhythmically with every heavy step it takes. Its curved tusks gleam like polished ivory in the twilight, and wisps of steam rise from its breath, creating a soft, foggy halo around its head in the freezing air. The only sound is the crunch of snow packing down beneath its massive feet in the low, comforting rumble of communication with its herd. They are the guardians of this frozen realm, unbothered by the cold, carrying their own internal fire. It is a reminder that warmth is not just found in the sun, but can be carried within us, a resilient shelter against the harshest of winters. Deep stone caverns offered a sanctuary from the sharp glacial winds. Inside these subterranean havens, the temperature remained constant and mild, a protective one within the Earth's rocky crust that shielded life from the storm outside. Picture stepping inside a high, silent grotto, where the flickering light of a small, central fire casts dancing shadows against the limestone walls. The orange glow reveals ancient ochre paintings of horses and bison, silent stories captured in pigment that seem to move as the light wavers. The air is still and smells faintly of wood smoke and damp stone, a grounding scent that signals absolute safety. Outside, the blizzard sings, but here in the deep quiet, there is only the crackle of embers and the rhythm of steady breathing. It is a humbling reminder that no matter how strong the storm moves on the surface, there is always a deep, quiet place of refuge waiting to be found within the bedrock of our existence. The prehistoric night sky burned with lights of impossible clarity. Without the haze of modern life, the stars appeared closer and brighter, piercing the velvet blackness with a diamond-hard brilliance that illuminated the snow below. Imagine lying back on a bed of furs, looking up as ribbons of emerald green and violet light begin to dance slowly across the heavens. The aurora borealis drifts like a silent river of spirit, twisting and turning in a celestial ballet that reflects off the endless white glaciers, turning the frozen world into a kaleidoscope of bioluminescent color. The silence is so profound that you can almost hear the hum of the universe, a deep, resonant vibration that syncs with the beating of your own heart. Time loses its meaning here, dissolving into the vastness of the cosmos. It is a reminder that there is a profound beauty in the darkness, and that the universe is always watching over us with a spectacular, silent grace. The soil deep beneath the surface froze into a permanent, solid state. This permafrost created a vast, subterranean time capsule, locking away the vibrant history of the Earth in a state of perfectly suspended animation. Imagine digging softly into the tundra to find a layer of soil that glitters with ancient ice crystals, hard as diamond and cold to the touch. In this dark, quiet nursery, delicate seeds and roots wait in a dreamless sleep, their potential preserved in the eternal dark, untouched by the passage of centuries or the shifting seasons above. The ice holds them in a safe, static embrace, shielding them from the decay of time. It is a world on pause, where the frantic pace of life is halted and the essence of existence is held in a patient, icy stasis. It is a reminder that even in the deepest freeze, potential remains dormant but alive, waiting for the right moment to awaken and bloom once more. Retreating, I slept behind basins of crystal clear, absolute stillness. These colossal depressions filled with meltwater that was pure, filtered by the glaciers, and utterly undisturbed by wind or tide. Picture a lake surface so smooth it looks like a sheet of polished obsidian, reflecting the jagged peaks of the snow-capped mountains with perfect, inverted symmetry. The water is a deep, bioluminescent turquoise near the edges, fading into a mysterious, abyssal navy at the center, holding secrets of the deep in its silent depths. There is no ripple to break the illusion. The water and the sky merge into one vast, blue continuum, creating a sense of infinite space. The silence here is heavy and thick, dampening every sound until only the rhythm of your own breath remains. It is a humbling reminder that after the heavy weight of the ice has passed, what remains is a clarity and depth that reflects the beauty of the world back to itself. Hardy vegetation clung to the frozen earth in low, resilient patches. The landscape was defined not by towering forests, but by a carpet of lichen, moss, and dwarf shrubs that hugged the ground to escape the sharp wind. Imagine walking through a vast, treeless expanse where the ground feels spongy and soft beneath your boots, a tapestry of muted russets, browns, and pale greens. These small, brave plants catch the low angle of the sun, glowing with a subtle, inner warmth against the backdrop of the endless white snow. They do not fight the cold, they endure it with a quiet, persistent strength, thriving where nothing else can, anchored deeply in the ancient soil. They whisper in the breeze, a soft, dry rustling that serves as the only music in this white silence. This reminds us that strength does not always roar or high, but often lies in the quiet resolve to stay grounded and endure through the harshest of seasons. Deep sleep became the ultimate survival strategy for many massive creatures. The rhythm of life slowed down to match the freezing temperature, allowing hearts to beat only a few times a minute in a profound metabolic trance. Picture a massive bear curled tight in the deepest recess of a limestone cave, its breath rising and falling in a slow, hypnotic cadence that measures the passing of the winter. Outside, the blizzard moves, but here, wrapped in thick fern-stored energy, there is only a warm, dark drift into the subconscious. The creature travels through a landscape of dreams, safe in its subterranean den, untouched by the storm, waiting for the signal of the sun. It is a reminder that sometimes the wisest action is to rest deeply, withdrawing into ourselves to preserve our energy until the world is ready for us to emerge again. The great melt began with a single, rhythmic drop of water. As the planetary cycle shifted, the steady grip of the ice began to loosen, turning the solid world back into a fluid one. Imagine standing at the edge of a glacier as the sun begins to warm the air, watching a tiny rivulet of water carve a path through the blue ice, glistening like liquid light. The sound of dripping water breaks the ancient silence, a soft, musical chime that signals a return of movement and life to the frozen valley. Green shoots push through the thinning snow, reaching eagerly for the warmth of the returning sun, transforming the barren white into a landscape of hope. This reminds us that no winter lasts forever, and that change, though slow and gradual, is the inevitable and beautiful promise of renewal that follows every cold season. Enormous herds carve deep, permanent trails into the landscape through sheer repetition. As these heavy wanderers migrated back and forth over centuries, their rhythmic footsteps compressed the soil, creating ancient highways that predated any road built by human hands. Imagine standing on a high, wind-swept ridge, looking down at the valley floor where a dark, winding line cuts through the pristine white snow. The path is packed hard and smooth, a testament to the thousands of generations that have walked this way before, guided by instinct in the seasons. The air is still, and you can almost feel the vibration of their passage in the ground, a low-frequency hum that lingers in the rock long after the giants have passed. It is a shared memory etched into the earth itself, visible only to those who know where to look. It is a reminder that the most enduring legacies are often left not by force, but by the quiet, steady persistence of simply keeping on the path. The acoustic landscape was defined by the hollow whistle of wind over ice. Without dense forests or sprawling cities to break the airflow, the wind traveled across the globe in long, uninterrupted currents that carried the songs of the earth for hundreds of miles. Imagine standing in the center of a vast, frozen plain, closing your eyes to listen to the symphony of the atmosphere. The sound is a low, deep flute note that rises and falls with the thermal currents, a soothing white noise that drowns out all chaotic thought. It rushes past your ears with a cold, clean intensity, carrying the scent of ozone and distant storms, wrapping you in a blanket of invisible sound. There is no start, no finish, only the eternal, circulating breath of the planet. It is a humbling reminder that the world has its own voice, a deep and ancient language that speaks of isolation, peace, and the vastness of the space we occupy. Glacial interiors illuminated the darkness with a deep, spectral shade of blue. As snow piled up over thousands of years, the weight pressed every pocket of air out of the layers below, leaving behind dense, crystal-clear ice that absorbed every color of the spectrum except for the deepest azure. Imagine wandering into the mouth of a massive crevasse where the walls tower above you like cathedral glass, glowing with a soft, bioluminescent light that seems to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The deeper you go, the darker and richer the blue becomes, shifting from a pale sky tone to a midnight indigo that feels heavy with the weight of time. It is a subterranean world of cold, light, silent and suspended, where the sun of the outside world is transformed into a cool, calming ghost of itself. It is a reminder that even in the coldest, hardest places, there is a hidden light waiting to be discovered, a beauty that only reveals itself when we look beneath the surface. Fire became the central beating heart of every human settlement during the freeze. In a world dominated by shadow and ice, the small, controlled flame was the only source of light and warmth, a glowing anchor in the endless, dark night. Picture a small circle of stones arranged on the floor of a cave, cradling a bed of glowing orange embers that pulse with a gentle, rhythmic heat. The smoke drifts lazily toward the ceiling, carrying the scent of burning pine and dried herbs, creating a cozy atmosphere of safety and belonging. Faces are illuminated in the soft, flickering light, eyes reflecting the dance of the flames as the cold darkness presses harmlessly against the entrance of the sanctuary. Here in the warmth, stories are shared and bonds are forged in the quiet spaces between words. It is a humbling reminder that we carry our own light with us, and that the simplest warmth can hold back the vastest dark if we tend to it with care. The sun hung low on the horizon for months without ever truly setting. During the high glacial summers near the poles, the star of our system skimmed the edge of the world, bathing the ice sheets in a perpetual, golden twilight that blurred the line between day and night. Imagine sitting on a rocky outcrop at midnight, watching the sky burn with streaks of violet, deep orange, and dark pink, casting long, soft shadows across the glittering snow. The light is not harsh, but diffused and dreamlike, creating a world where time seems to dissolve into a single, endless moment. Everything is bathed in this strange, ethereal glow, turning the harsh ice into a landscape of soft, pastel velvet. There is no urgency to sleep or to wake, only a drifting state of existence in the beautiful half-light. This reminds us that there are moments when the end and the beginning merge, creating a timeless space where we can simply be, suspended in the gentle glow of eternity. Heavy snowfall acts as nature's ultimate acoustic insulator. This thick, soft blanket descends from the heavy gray skies, instantly dampening the vibrations of the world and turning the landscape into a muted, hushed sanctuary. Imagine standing in the center of a boreal forest as the snow begins to fall in massive, feather-like clumps. There is no wind, only the hypnotic, vertical drift of millions of white flakes settling gently onto the pine boughs and the frozen ground. The air turns a soft, misty white, blurring the horizon until the trees seem to float in a cloud. The silence is profound and heavy, a physical weight that presses softly against your ears, blocking out the chaos of the past and the worry of the future. It is a world wrapped in cotton, safe and enclosed. It is a reminder that silence is not just an absence of noise, but a presence of peace, a necessary pause that allows the soul to finally rest. Deep fissures in the crust released ancient, subterranean heat. Even in the depths of the glacial maximum, the earth kept its internal fire burning, creating hidden pockets of steam and warmth amidst the frozen wastes. Picture a hidden valley where a geothermal spring bubbles up from the bedrock, its waters clear and startlingly hot against the surrounding snow. Thick clouds of white mist roll off the surface, drifting lazily into the cold air, creating a dreamlike, shifting veil that obscures the jagged rocks. The stones at the water's edge are warm and slick with minerals, offering a rare tropical comfort in a polar world. The sound is a soft, rhythmic bubbling, a lullaby of water and earth interacting in perfect harmony. It is a humbling reminder that even when the surface of our lives feels frozen and still, there is always a deep, unquenchable warmth waiting beneath, ready to rise and comfort us. The moon shone with an unobstructed silver intensity. Without the interference of city lights or smog, the lunar glow during the Ice Age was a powerful, illuminating force that turned the night into a monochrome day. Imagine the full moon rising over the edge of a vast ice shelf, casting a stark, brilliant path of white light across the frozen ocean. The ice crystals sparkle like crushed diamonds, catching the beams and scattering them into 1,000 tiny points of light. The shadows are deep, velvet black, creating a high-contrast world of absolute stillness and beauty. The celestial body hangs heavy and close, a silent guardian watching over the sleeping earth, pulling at the tides beneath the ice in a slow, rhythmic breath. It is a reminder that we are never truly in the dark, and that even in the deepest night, there is always a light to guide us through the silence. Resin from ancient pines trapped moments of time forever. As the coniferous forest stood resilient against the cold, they wept thick, golden tears that hardened into eternal gems, capturing the very essence of the prehistoric sunlight. Picture a single drop of translucent amber clinging to the rough bark of a pine tree, glowing with a warm, honey-colored light against the backdrop of the blue snow. Inside this suspended sphere, a tiny fragment of a leaf or a bubble of air is held in perfect stasis, immune to the decay of millions of years. It is a warm, glowing lantern in the cold forest, a physical piece of the sun solidified and kept safe. The forest is quiet, and this small gem waits patiently for the future. This reminds us that precious moments, no matter how small or fleeting, can be preserved and held within us, shining with a golden warmth long after the season has passed. The earth's crust moved with a slow, fluid elasticity. Beneath the immense weight of the 2-mile thick ice sheets, the very ground bowed down, creating a vast depression in the planet's surface that lasted for millennia. Imagine the solid rock beneath your feet not as something rigid, but as something patient and yielding, sinking slowly into the mantle in a deep geological exhale. It is a movement so slow it is invisible to the eye, yet it represents a profound connection between the burden above and the foundation below. As the ice eventually retreats, the land begins to rise again, a slow, triumphant inhale that lifts continents back to their rightful height over thousands of years. It is a humbling reminder that resilience is often a slow and quiet process, and that no matter how heavy the burden we carry, we possess the innate strength to rise again when the weight is lifted. Tiny pockets of ancient atmosphere were wrapped forever within the compressing snow. As the layers of white powder piled up over millennia, the weight pressed them down into solid ice, locking away the very breath of the world in microscopic spheres of time. These tiny bubbles are suspended in the dark, cold heart of the glacier, holding the chemical signature of a sky that no living eye has seen for thousands of years. Imagine peering closely into a block of this deep, ancient ice, illuminating it with a soft light to reveal the galaxy of tiny, suspended pearls trapped within. They are perfectly still, waiting in the silence, preserving the exact moment they were buried by the storm. The ice protects them from the chaos of the changing world above, keeping them safe in a state of eternal suspension. It is a humbling reminder that the past is never truly lost, but is held safely in the deep, quiet archives of the earth, waiting for us to slow down enough to read it. Massive boulders were carried silently across continents on the backs of the ice. These solitary giants, known as erratic, were plucked from their parent mountains and transported thousands of miles away by the slow, continuous flow of the glaciers. Without any effort of their own, they drifted on a river of solid ice, moving imperceptibly through the centuries until the ice finally melted and gently set them down in a new land. Picture a colossal, gray stone resting alone in the middle of a vast, flat plain, its surface covered in a soft velvet of green moss and silver lichen. It sits there with a profound sense of gravity and peace, a silent traveler that has found its final resting place after a journey of eons. The wind blows around it, but the stone remains unmoved, anchored by its own weight and history. This reminds us that sometimes we are carried by forces greater than ourselves, and that if we trust the journey, we will eventually be set down exactly where we are meant to be. Relentless winds sculpted the snow into hardened, wave-like ridges known as stratigraphy. These sharp, irregular formations covered the vast ice sheets, creating a texture that resembled a frozen, wide ocean caught in the middle of a storm. The wind did not just blow over the surface it carved it, polishing the snow until it was as hard as marble and intricately detailed with sweeping curves and edges. Imagine walking across this endless expanse where the low sun casts long, deep blue shadows behind every ridge, creating a high contrast pattern of light and dark that stretches to the horizon. The surface glitters like diamond dust, and the only sound is the soft, dry hiss of ice crystals drifting over the hard-packed dunes. It is a landscape of stark, geometric beauty, shaped by the invisible hand of the atmosphere. It is a reminder that even the invisible forces in our lives can shape us into something beautiful and resilient, carving out our character with patient, steady persistence. Red pigment outlined the hands of those who sought to leave a mark in the dark. Deep within the protective limestone walls of the earth, early humans placed their palms against the cold, damp walls and blew ochre dust over them, creating a negative image that would outlast their own civilizations. Picture standing in the flickering light of a tallow lamp, looking at a panel of these ghostly handprints reaching out from the stone, suspended in a moment of ancient connection. The rock is cool to the touch, grounding you in the present, while the reed imagery pulls you back into the deep past. It is a quiet gesture of existence, a silent shout into the void that says, "I was here and I was alive." The cave holds this memory in its silent, airless embrace, protecting it from the erosion of time. It is a humbling reminder that we are part of a long, unbroken chain of human experience, and that our desire to be remembered is as ancient and enduring as the stone itself. Life adapted to the whiteness by fading completely into the background. To survive in a world without color, creatures like the Arctic fox and the hare shed their earthen coats and grew layers of pure, snowy white fur, becoming invisible to the predator and the prey alike. Imagine a small, curled form sleeping on a bank of snow, indistinguishable from the drift except for the tiny, black hole of its nose and the soft rise and fall of its breathing. It moves through the world like a spirit, silent and unseen, perfectly in tune with its environment, asking for no attention and leaving no trace. The cold wind ruffles its thick fur, but the heat remains trapped close to the skin, a secret fire burning within the phantom of the snow. It is a state of perfect harmony, where the boundary between the being and the world dissolves. This reminds us that there is safety and stillness in blending in, and that sometimes the best way to endure the winter is to gently become one with the silence around us. Hidden pools of asphalt acted as perfect, unintended time capsules. The skies had a sea of stars, these viscous, black reservoirs that concealed beneath thin layers of water or leaves, waiting patiently to preserve whatever ventured too close in the prehistoric mist. The substance itself was thick and slow-moving, a deep earthen molasses that captured the very bones of the arrow with startling precision, locking them away from the decay of oxygen and time. Imagine standing at the edge of one of these dark, glossy pools as a slow, heavy bubble of methane rises to the surface and bursts with a soft, wet pop. The surface is like a dark mirror reflecting the overcast sky and the twisted branches of ancient cypress trees, holding the history of the valley in its murky depths. It is a place of absolute finality, where the journey of life is replaced by the stillness of geology. It is a humbling reminder that the earth has a way of keeping its own records, holding onto the past in deep, dark archives that eventually reveal the truth of what came before us. Sea levels dropped so low that continents touched hands across the waves. What is now a churning, icy ocean was once a vast, silent steppe of dry land, a grassy bridge that invited life to wander from one world to another. The wind swept across this temporary plain without obstruction, carrying the seeds of wildflowers and the scent of distant snow to new frontiers. Picture yourself walking across this endless, flat horizon where the pale yellow grass ripples like water under the breeze, creating a hypnotic, shifting pattern that stretches for 1,000 miles. The sky is immense, a vaulted dome of pale blue that seems to hold the earth in a suspended breath, and under your feet is the soil that once lay beneath the sea. There's no map here, only the instinct to move forward toward the rising sun. It is a reminder that barriers are often temporary, and that paths will appear to connect us to where we need to go if we have the courage to step out into the vast unknown. Solitary giants roamed the frozen plains in heavy, armored silence. Unlike the herds that moved as one, the woolly rhinoceros often walked alone, a stoic fortress of muscle and fur designed to withstand the crushing weight of the Arctic winter. Its massive, Karen horn swept close to the ground, sweeping away deep snow to reveal the dormant grasses hidden beneath the frost. Imagine seeing this magnificent creature emerging slowly from a bank of dense, white fog, its breath billowing out in rhythmic clouds that merge with the mist. The thick, shaggy coat is matted with ice, and its small eyes are calm and unblinking, focused entirely on the slow, steady task of survival. and moves with a deliberate, heavy grace, undisturbed by the isolation of the landscape, carrying its own world within it. This reminds us that there is a profound dignity in solitude, and that we possess the strength to walk our own path through the cold, sustained by the quiet power of our own resilience. Water freezing in slow motion created subterranean cathedrals of geometric perfection. Deep inside the glacial structures, where the temperature hovered at a precise freezing point, water dripped and solidified over centuries to form intricate curtains of translucent stone and ice. These formations grew atom by atom, a testament to the power of patience in the slow accumulation of time. Picture stepping into a cavern where the ceiling is hung with thousands of glittering stalactites, each one catching a faint, ambient light and refracting it into a spectrum of faint blues and purples. The silence is absolute, broken only by the occasional echo chime of a single drop falling into a clear pool below. The walls shimmer with a wet, glass-like sheen, enclosing you in a jewelry box of frozen water that feels sacred and removed from the world. It is a humbling reminder that the most breathtaking beauty is often built slowly, in the dark, drop by single drop, until it forms a masterpiece that commands our silent awe. The planetary axis tilted slowly to invite the warmth back in. This celestial shift was gentle and imperceptible to those on the ground, yet it signaled the inevitable end of the long, white slumber and the return of the liquid world. The sun began to trace a slightly higher arc across the sky each day, its rays penetrating deeper into the compacted snow, loosening the bonds of the ice crystals. Imagine standing on a hillside as the first patch of dark, rich earth breaks through the melting snow, smelling damp and fertile, promising the return of green life. A small white flower pushes its head up toward the light, trembling in the breeze, a herald of the coming spring. The air feels softer, losing its sharp edge, and the world seems to exhale. It is a reminder that no season is permanent, and that even the longest, coldest winters must eventually yield to the gentle, warming touch of a new beginning. Rivers ran thick with the ground bones of the mountains. As the massive glaciers ground against the bedrock, they pulverized the stone into a fine, flour-like silt that turned the meltwater streams into ribbons of opaque, milky turquoise. This glacial milk flowed slowly through the valleys, a heavy, mineral-rich fluid that carried the very essence of the high peaks down to the sea. Imagine sitting on a mossy bank watching this surreal, pastel water wind its way through a field of gray rocks, glowing with an internal light that seems to defy the overcast sky. The color is vivid and unearthly, a striking contrast to the monochromatic white of the surrounding snow, swirling in slow, hypnotic eddies. It is a silent transfer of energy where the towering mountains surrender their substance to the ocean. It is a humbling reminder that even the hardest obstacles can be transformed into something flowing and beautiful, and that friction often creates the most vibrant colors in the tapestry of our lives. The antlers of the great elk span wider than a man is tall. These majestic creatures, kings of the open steppe, carried a crown of bone that weighed hundreds of pounds, yet they moved with a floating, effortless grace through the tall grasses. Imagine the silhouette of an Irish elk emerging from the morning mist, its massive rack holding the damp fog like a net, draped in heavy velvet that softens its outline. The creature pauses, lifting its head to taste the cold air, its neck muscles thick and powerful, supporting the immense burden without strain. It moves in slow motion, a regal phantom of the Ice Age, perfectly balanced despite the weight it carries. The silence of the plains is unbroken, save for the soft swish of grass against its legs. This reminds us that true strength is not just about power, but about the ability to carry heavy responsibilities with a quiet dignity and an undisturbed sense of balance. Winds carried the fertile dust of the future across the globe. Notice Lois. This fine, mineral-rich sediment was lifted from the dry glacial plains and transported on the breeze, creating a golden haze that softened the harsh glare of the sun. It settled gently over the landscape in thick, blanket-like layers, smoothing out the rough contours of the earthen preparing the ground for the forests that would one day rise. Picture a late afternoon where the air is filled with this shimmering yellow dust catching the light like suspended gold leaf. It drifts down silently, covering the rocks and the ice in a soft, powdery embrace, building the foundation of the world to come one microscopic grain at a time. The atmosphere feels thick and protective, a warm filter over the cold reality. It is a reminder that the seeds of our future, growth are often drifting unseen in the air around us, waiting for the right moment to settle and take root. Stone was shaped by the rhythmic patience of human hands. In the quiet glow of the firelight, the creation of a tool was a meditative act, a repetitive cycle of striking and turning that required absolute focus and calm. A piece of raw flint or obsidian was transformed into a translucent, razor-sharp point through a series of precise, calculated movements. Imagine watching a pair of weathered hands working a piece of black glass, the sound of the stone clicking against stone creating a steady, percussive heartbeat in the silent cave. A flake falls away, revealing a perfect, rippled edge that gleams in the firelight, sharp enough to divide a hair. The mind is emptied of all other thoughts, anchored entirely in the now of the task. It is a humbling reminder that the most enduring things are crafted not with haste, but with slow, deliberate attention, and that patience can turn the roughest raw material into something of clear and useful beauty. The eyes eventually retreated to the poles to resume its silent watch. As the epic drifted to a close, the great white sheets did not vanish, but merely withdrew, pulling back their edges to reveal the scarred and polished earth they had protected for so long. The glaciers left behind rolling hills of debris and vast water-filled basins, a landscape forever changed by their heavy embrace. Picture the slow, time-lapse recession of the ice over centuries, a white tide going out to reveal the green and brown bedrock returning to the sun. The air warms, the birds return, but the ice remains in the far north and south, a white reserve of cold and quiet, keeping the planet in balance. It is a dormant giant, resting until the cycle turns again. This reminds us that nothing is ever truly gone, only changed, and that the cycles of rest and activity are the eternal, breathing rhythm of the universe that cradles us all. The apex predator of the frozen plains relied on patience rather than speed. This silent hunter did not dominate through chaotic action, but through a masterful stillness that allowed it to vanish into the tall, swaying grasses of the steppe. Picture tawny coat blending perfectly with the winter vegetation, the creature motionless as a stone, while its long, curved canines glint softly like ivory icicles in the pale afternoon light. The air is crisp and carries the scent of pine and snow, yet the hunter remains anchored in a deep, meditative trance, conserving every ounce of energy for the singular moment of necessity. It breathes in sync with the wind, a ghost within the landscape, embodying the quiet, potent grace of the natural world. This reminds us that true power often lies not in constant, frantic motion, but in the disciplined ability to wait in silence, trusting that the right moment will eventually arrive. A grassy bridge connected the hemispheres under a single, endless polar sky. This land bridge, known as Beringia, was not merely a path, but a distinct world of its own, a dry and chilly steppe where the ocean floor had risen to meet the air. Imagine standing in the center of this continental span at night, where the ground is hard and dusted with frost, feeling the vastness of Asia behind you and the promise of the Americas ahead. The silence is absolute, broken only by the soft, dry rattle of sagebrush in the wind, a sound that whispers of ancient migrations on long, solitary journeys. The stars overhead are brilliant and unblinking, guiding travelers with a cold, geometric precision across the desolate miles. It is a humbling reminder that even when the distances between us seem insurmountable, there are always hidden bridges waiting to rise from the depths, offering a quiet, steady path to bring worlds together. Massive sleepers sought the deepest recesses of the mountains for their long rest. The cave bear, the giant of the era, treated the limestone caverns not just as shelter, but as a sacred vessel for the preservation of life during the lean months. Picture entering a chamber so deep within the earth that the silence rings in your ears, where a massive mound of fur rises and falls with a breath that comes only once every minute. The air is still and damp, smelling of wet stone and the musk of deep sleep, holding the creature in a suspended state of biological twilight. In this utter darkness, there is no fear, only the comfort of the earth's heavy embrace protecting the sleeper until the green shoots return. It is a reminder that there is a time to withdraw from the world and turn inward, finding safety in the dark to restore our strength for the days to come. The ice spoke in a language of deep, resonant groans and sharp cracks. Even in the seeming stillness of the frozen world, the glaciers were alive, shifting their immense weight with a slow, grinding power that echoed through the valleys. Imagine lying on the surface of a glacier, pressing your ear against the cold, hard blue surface to listen to the hidden conversations of the ice. You feel a low-frequency vibration travel through your body, a thrumming beat that sounds like the earth clearing its throat, followed by the distant, deep resonance of a fissure opening miles away. It is a symphony of tension and release, a reminder that the world is never truly static, but is always settling and adjusting. This reminds us that deep internal shifts, though sometimes unsettling, are a natural part of growth and movement, necessary for the landscape of our lives to find its new and proper balance. Hidden valleys cradled the last remnants of the ancient, green forests. These secret gardens, known as glacial refugia, were pockets of defiance where the geography protected the trees from the encroaching ice, keeping the lineage of the forest alive. Picture cresting a snow-capped ridge to look down into a bowl-shaped depression where the air is suddenly warmer and the scent of crushed pine needles fills your senses. The green here is deep and vibrant against the white rim of the world, a sanctuary where birds still sing and the water runs free and clear. It is a biological ark holding the seeds of the future regeneration in a quiet, protected embrace. It is a humbling reminder that even in the harshest of winters, there are always sheltered places where life endures, waiting patiently for the season to turn so it may spread its branches once again. The air itself crystallized into a shimmering, suspended mist. Known as diamond dust, this weather phenomenon occurred when the temperature plummeted so low that the humidity froze instantly, filling the atmosphere with millions of microscopic ice prisms. These tiny crystals drifted slowly toward the ground, not as snow, but as a glittering fog that caught the pale sunlight and refracted it into sudden flashes of color. Imagine walking through this ethereal cloud, where the air around you sparkles like a veil of crushed jewels, creating halos and darks of light around the sun. The world feels magical and suspended, as if you are moving through a solid block of light and cold. There is a crisp, metallic taste to the air, and a visual beauty that defies the harshness of the temperature. It is a reminder that even in the most challenging environments, the atmosphere can transform into something of startling, delicate beauty if we just take a moment to look at the light. Living laws of will recount the sharp wind. The muskoxen, ancient survivors of the freeze, understood that their greatest defense against the cold was their proximity to one another. During the height of the blizzard, they formed an impenetrable circle, standing shoulder to shoulder with their formidable horns facing outward and their vulnerable calves tucked safely in the warm center. Picture the shaggy, dark fortress standing firm in the middle of a white gale, their long, matted hair swaying in the wind while steam rises from their collective bodies in a rhythmic cloud. They do not move, they simply endure, sharing their heat in a silent pact of survival. The storm moves around them, but within the circle, there is a calm, beating heart of safety. This reminds us that when we face the storms of life, we are not meant to stand alone, but to find shelter and strength in the close, warm presence of those who stand beside us. Rivers flowed secretly beneath the heavy weight of ice. Deep below the glaciers, where the pressure was immense and the friction of the moving ice generated heat, networks of liquid water carved out hidden tunnels in the dark. These subglacial rivers rush silently through smooth, cylindrical channels of blue ice, unseen by any eye on the surface, carrying the meltwater toward the ocean in a continuous, hidden flow. Imagine drifting inside one of these secret arteries where the water is black and cold, sliding effortlessly over a bed of polished rock while a ceiling of ice smiles that glooms above. It is a world of fluid motion encased in a world of solid stillness, a secret vascular system keeping the glacier alive. It is a humbling reminder that even when we feel frozen or stuck on the surface, there are always deep, hidden currents of emotion and life moving within us, flowing toward a destination we cannot yet see. Horizons dissolved completely into a soft, luminous void. In a phenomenon known as a whiteout, the heavy, overcast sky and the snow-covered ground matched perfectly in brightness, erasing all shadows and landmarks. The world became a seamless, featureless sphere of white where depth perception vanished and the concept of distance lost all meaning. Imagine standing in this infinite blankness where you feel as though you are floating in a cloud and tethered from the earth. There is no up or down, no near or far, only a gentle, glowing light that wraps around you from every direction. The silence is absolute and the lack of visual input quiets the mind, stripping away the need to plan or navigate. It is a state of pure being, a blank canvas for the soul. This reminds us that there is a profound peace in letting go of our direction, allowing ourselves to simply drift in the safety of the moment without needing to know exactly where we are going. The continent ended in a sheer, towering white cliff. At the edge of the land, the ice sheets extended out over the ocean, forming massive floating shelves that rose hundreds of feet out of the dark, churning water. These edges were the dramatic frontiers of the frozen world, where the static ice finally met the dynamic sea. Picture standing on the precipice of this great white wall, looking out over an ocean that is the color of bruised steel, dotted with islands of floating ice. The wind here is salty and wild, and every so often, with a slow, majestic groaning sound, a piece of the cliff breaks away to begin a new journey as a solitary iceberg. The scale is immense, dwarfing everything in its presence. It is a humbling reminder that boundaries are often places of transformation, where we must break away from the solid ground of the past to drift toward new and unexplored horizons. Shelter was constructed from the remains of the fallen giants. On the windswept, treeless tundra, early humans gathered the massive, curved tusks and heavy mandibles of woolly mammoths to build their circular homes. These were not grim monuments, but warm, architectural marvels draped in thick furs and insulated with sod, creating a cozy microclimate against the sharp wind. Imagine approaching one of these dwellings at twilight, seeing a pale, curved ivory glowing softly in the moonlight, interlocking to form a protective dome against the dark. Inside, the air is warm and smells of dry grass and wood smoke, a stark contrast to the strong gale just inches away. The structure feels grounded and heavy, an organic extension of the earth itself that turns the harsh environment into a place of safety. It is a humbling reminder that even in the most barren landscapes, we possess the ingenuity to build a sanctuary, transforming what remains of the past into a shelter for our future. Movement was measured in slow, deliberate inches. The giant ground sloth, the creature the size of an elephant, navigated the prehistoric woodlands with a heavy, peaceful gravity that defied the frantic pace of smaller life. It did not rush, it simply existed, using its immense, curved claws to gently pull down high branches that no other animal could reach. Picture this towering figure standing on its hind legs, silhouetted against a backdrop of pale, frosty trees, its shaggy coat thick with dust and ancient pollen. It moves with a rhythmic, swaying motion, unhurried by the changing seasons, eating leaves with a calm, meditative focus. The forest around it is quiet, respecting the space of this gentle titan. It is a reminder that there is a profound strength in taking our time, and that a slow, steady pace allows us to reach heights that rushing never could. Glaciers carve the mountains into deep, welcoming cradles. Unlike the sharp, jagged cuts of rushing rivers, the heavy, sliding ice scooped out the earth to create broad, U-shaped valleys with steep, majestic walls. This geological reshaping opened up the landscape, creating vast, airy corridors where the light could spill in and fill the empty space. Imagine standing in the center of one of these great, silent halls after the ice has retreated, feeling small against the towering cliffs of gray granite. The floor is flat and lush with new green moss, and a calm, winding stream reflects the open sky above. The scale is immense, creating a sense of breadth and freedom in a place that was once crushed by weight. This reminds us that the heavy burdens we carry can eventually hollow us out in the most beautiful way, creating a spacious capacity within our souls to hold more light and peace than before. Rushing water was captured in a sculpture of suspended motion. As the temperature dropped, the roaring cascades of the mountain streams were silenced, layer by layer, until they became static curtains of crystalline light. The energy of the fall was not lost, but paused, held in a tension of frozen beauty that defied gravity. Picture standing at the base of a 100-foot wall of ice where the water has formed intricate, organ-pipe columns of white and pale blue. The surface is slick and dribbled, capturing the fluid shape of the water in a solid, eternal moment. It is perfectly silent, a monument to the pause between breaths, glistening under the winter sun. It is a humbling reminder that there is beauty in the standstill, and that sometimes we must freeze in our tracks to fully appreciate the shape and flow of the life we are living. The galaxy revealed itself as a dense, luminous river. Without the interference of artificial light, the night sky of the Ice Age was a crowded, three-dimensional tapestry of stars that touched the very edges of the horizon. The Milky Way was not just a faint smudge, but a structured, spiraling cloud of diamond dust that seemed to hold the Earth in a cosmic embrace. Imagine lying back on a bed of dry heather, looking up into the infinite depth of the universe, where the stars are so bright they seem to hum with a silent energy. The darkness between them is velvet deep, emphasizing the brilliance of the light, and you feel the slow rotation of the planet beneath you, drifting through the vast ocean of space. It is a world of absolute clarity and perspective. This reminds us that we are part of something infinite and grand, and that even in the darkest, coldest nights, we are surrounded by a billion points of guiding light. The predator's teeth were precision tools designed for a surgical silence. These iconic hunters did not rely on the sheer strength of a chaotic chase, but on the quiet, calculated art of the ambush, requiring them to immobilize their world before making a sound. Imagine crouched low in the golden, frost-tipped tall grass, watching the muscular back of a saber-toothed cat as it blends seamlessly into the winter landscape. Its breathing is so shallow it barely disturbs the cold air, and its amber eyes are fixed with an unblinking, meditative intensity on the horizon. The silence of the steppe is amplified by its presence, a tense, heavy quiet that holds the breath of the entire valley in suspense. It moves like liquid shadow, embodying the perfect discipline of waiting for the exact alignment of circumstance. It is a humbling reminder that true effectiveness often requires us to be still and observant, acting not with haste, but with a focused, quiet intention when the moment is right. A shift of merely 5 degrees transformed the entire planet's destiny. This slight atmospheric cooling was enough to tip the delicate balance of the biosphere, turning rain into snow and water into stone across the northern hemisphere. It was a soft, planetary exhale that cooled the fever of the previous age, bringing along restorative rest to the ecosystems. Picture standing in an open field as the temperature drops just enough to turn the dew on the grass into intricate crystalline frost. The air becomes sharper, cleaner, and the world seems to snap into a higher definition under the cold clarity of the shift. It is a subtle transformation, invisible in the moment but monumental in its consequence, wrapping the earth in a white, protective slumber. This reminds us that the most profound changes in our lives often stem from the smallest shifts in our environment or mindset, and that a gentle cooling down can create a whole new world of beautiful possibilities. Every winter season laid down a distinct, readable layer of history. Like the rings of a great tree, the ice sheets accumulated year after year, pressing the memory of ancient snowfalls into thin, horizontal bands of time. These layers hold the dust of ancient volcanoes, the pollen of long-extinct flowers, and the isotopes of a younger sun, all compressed into a vertical archive of the Earth. Imagine standing before a sheer cliff of glacial ice, tracing your gloved finger across the delicate, blue-white stripes that represent thousands of years of silent accumulation. It is a library of frozen moments, stacking up slowly to build a foundation that supports the world above, preserving the atmosphere of the past in a perfect cold stasis. The deeper you look, the further back you travel, drifting into the quiet depths of the past. It is a humbling reminder that our lives are built layer by layer, and that every season, no matter how cold or difficult, adds to the strong, beautiful foundation of who we are. Sound traveled for miles across the hard, reflective surfaces. Without the dampening effect of soft leaves or dense undergrowth, the frozen landscape acted as a perfect acoustic mirror, carrying the smallest noises across vast distances with startling clarity. A cracking branch or a shifting stone became a clear, ringing note in the symphony of the silence, traveling unimpeded through the thin, cold air. Picture standing on the edge of a frozen lake, clapping your hands once and hearing the sound ripple away from you, bouncing off the distant mountains on returning as a crisp, rhythmic echo. The air is so still that the sound seems to hang suspended, a physical presence in the cold void, connecting you to the far reaches of the horizon. It is a world of sonic purity where nothing is lost to the noise. It is a reminder that in moments of stillness and clarity, our true voice can travel much further than we expect, resonating with the world around us in a clear, unbroken echo. The heavy ice retreated to reveal all landscapes cropped clean and new. As the glaciers withdrew, they left behind bedrock that had been polished smooth by the weight and friction of the ages, creating surfaces that shone like glass under the returning sun. The scars of the past were transformed into beautiful, flowing lines in the stone, a testament to the journey the earth had endured during the long winter. Imagine running your hand over a massive expanse of granite that feels cool and impossibly smooth to the touch, seeing the sunlight glint off the mineral veins that have been exposed for the first time in millennia. The world feels fresh, washed clean by the ice, ready to be planted with new forests and rivers that will follow the path of the meltwater. It is a humbling reminder that difficult seasons often serve to polish away our rough edges, leaving us smoother, stronger, and ready to shine more brightly when the warmth finally returns. Generations of passing giants polished the rough stone into a smooth embrace. In the deepest, narrowest corridors of the limestone caves, the great cave bears moved with a sluggish, sleepy rhythm, brushing their heavy fur against the rock walls season after season. Over thousands of years, this gentle, repetitive friction wore down the sharp edges of the geology, leaving behind a surface that feels as slick and warm as polished marble in the darkness. Imagine running your hand along the cool curve of the tunnel, your fingertips gliding over the stone where the texture has been softened by the ghosts of the past. It is a tactile memory of safety, a physical record of the creatures that sought refuge here from the sharp wind outside. The air is still and quiet, holding the faint, comforting risk of hibernation and the peace of deep sleep. It is a humbling reminder that even the hardest obstacles in our path can be softened over time by gentleness, persistence, and the quiet rhythm of simply moving forward. Beneath the floating ice shelves, a galaxy of bioluminescence drifted in the dark. While the surface world was locked in a monochrome white, the subglacial ocean teemed with strange, glowing life that required no sunlight to shine. Tiny, translucent creatures drifted on the currents, pulsing with a rhythmic, electric blue light that illuminated the underside of the massive ice ceiling above them. Picture yourself floating weightlessly in this obsidian water, watching as a cloud of glowing plankton swirls around you like underwater stardust, painting the darkness with soft, neon strokes. The silence here is pressurized and thick, a protective blanket that muffles the cracking of the ice miles above. It is a secret universe of color hidden away in the crushing depths, a private light show that plays on an eternal loop for an audience of silence. This reminds us that even in the deepest, darkest places where the sun cannot reach, there is always an inner light waiting to be discovered, pulsing with a quiet, resilient beauty. Stranded blocks of ice slowly transformed into perfect circular mirrors. As the great glaciers retreated, they often left behind massive, isolated chunks of ice buried deep within the gravel and soil, separated from the main flow. Over centuries, these solitary captives melted in the quiet earth, creating deep round depressions that filled with crystal clear water, known as kettle ponds. Imagine standing at the edge of one of these perfectly round pools, the surface indistinguishable from glass, reflecting the passing clouds and the pale blue sky with absolute fidelity. The water is still and cold, a liquid memory of the ice that once occupied this space, now turned into a sanctuary for new life. It sits peacefully in the landscape, a calm eye looking up at the heavens, undisturbed by the wind. It is a humbling reminder that what we leave behind can eventually transform into something of depth and beauty, and that the empty spaces in our lives are often waiting to be filled with clarity and peace. The geometry of the atmosphere revealed itself in halos of pale fire. When the sun struggled to rise through the haze of diamond dust, its light was caught and bent by billions of hexagonal ice crystals drifting in the air, creating magnificent, luminous rings around the star. These sundogs stood like sentinels on either side of the sun, phantom lights that shimmered with faint spectral colors of red and blue against the white sky. Picture looking up at a vast, pale expanse to see this celestial architecture, a perfect circle of light crowning the world, making the cold air feel sacred and intentional. The light is diffused and soft, lacking the harsh glare of a summer day, bathing the snow in a gentle, ethereal glow that feels almost holy. It is a reminder that even the coldest, most difficult atmosphere can refract the light into something extraordinary, creating a halo of beauty that encircles us when we least expect it. The scent of the ancient earth was released by the first warmth. For thousands of years, the aromas of the soil, the crushed pine needles, the damp moss, and the rich peat were locked away under an impermeable seal of ice and frost. As the great thaw began, the ground softened and exhaled, releasing a perfume of raw, fertile history that had been preserved in the dark. Imagine walking out onto the tundra on the first true day of spring, closing your eyes to inhale the complex, grounding smell of waking soil. It is a heavy, organic scent that speaks of growth and potential, a sharp contrast to the sterile, clean smell of the snow that has dominated for so long. The air feels thick with life, and the wind carries the promise of green shoots pushing through the mud. This reminds us that deep within us, there are dormant seeds of potential that never truly fade, waiting patiently for the right warmth to release their essence back into the world. Sound waves traveled with zero distortion across the glass-like plains. In the absence of absorbing foliage or city hum, the frozen landscape acted as a perfect conductor, carrying the smallest whisper of the earth for miles without losing its shape. Imagine standing on the edge of a vast, frozen caldera where the silence is so deep it feels like a physical pressure against your skin, waiting for a signal. Suddenly, the deep, resonant resonance of shifting ice echoes from the mountains, a low-frequency pulse that travels through the ground and up through the soles of your boots, vibrating in your chest. It is a clean, singular note in a symphony of quiet, ringing out with a startling purity that defines the vastness of the space around you. The echo takes seconds to return, measuring the distance in a slow, rhythmic bounce that matches the invisible world. It is a humbling reminder that when we clear away the noise of our daily lives, a single, honest voice can resonate with incredible power and reach across the greatest distances. Thy vast ribbon of This was not a barren, quiet expanse of white, but a complex, golden ocean of hardy herbs and sagebrush that thrived under the dry, cold sky of the glacial epoch. Picture walking waist deep through this ancient mammoth steppe, where the pale yellow stalks brushed softly against your legs with a dry, rustling sound that mimics the ocean tide. The scent of wild thyme and wormwood rises from the frozen earth, a sharp herbal aroma that clears the mind and grounds you in the present moment. Small, resilient flowers hide near the roots, hoarding the warmth of the soil, flashing tiny sparks of purple and blue against the tawny landscape. The wind ripples through the expanse, creating shifting patterns of light and shadow that dance all the way to the horizon. This reminds us that even in the driest and coldest of seasons, there is always a hidden abundance of nourishment and life if we know where to look for it. The bedrock began to rise slowly as the heavy weight lifted. This geological phenomenon, known as isostatic rebound, is the Earth's patient, slow-motion stretch after carrying the immense burden of the ice sheets for thousands of years. Imagine the solid ground beneath you not as a rigid stage, but as a living, breathing entity that is gently inhaling, lifting the shoreline inch by inch over the course of centuries. Ancient beaches that once kissed the sea are now lifted high onto the cliffs, resting quietly above the waves as a testament to the Earth's resilience. The movement is imperceptible to the eye, a silent recovery that spans generations, yet it reshapes the entire map of the world with a steady, unstoppable force. The land remembers its original shape and slowly returns to it, no matter how long it was held down. It is a humbling reminder that recovery is not a race, but a natural, inevitable process of returning to our true selves after the weight has finally been lifted. Deep heat from the planet's core defied the surface freeze. Scattered across the frozen continents were secret, geothermal pockets where the Earth's internal fire broke through the crust to create tiny, steaming sanctuaries of life. Picture stumbling upon a hidden crater in the midst of a blinding snowstorm, where the air suddenly turns humid and warm, smelling of whetstone and sulfur. Inside this circle of melted rock, lush green ferns and mosses cling to the warm earth, thriving in a microclimate that has forgotten the winter entirely. A thick mist rises from the hot springs, creating a soft, opaque veil that separates this warm paradise from the strong, white wind just yards away. It is a secret garden kept alive by the deep, burning heart of the world, unaffected by the changing seasons above. This reminds us that no matter how cold the environment becomes, we carry a deep, internal fire that can create a sanctuary of warmth and life wherever we choose to stand. The architecture of the night sky served as the original map. For the wanderers of the Ice Age, the constellations were not just beautiful lights, but reliable, fixed anchors that guided their long journeys across the featureless white plains. Imagine standing on the open tundra at midnight, tilting your head back to see the Great Bear burning with a fierce, cold brilliance directly overhead. The North Star sits motionless at the center of the celestial wheel, a diamond pivot point around which the entire universe seems to slowly revolve. The snow beneath your feet glows faintly with starlight, mirroring the heavens, creating a sense of total alignment between the earth and the sky. You are never lost here, for the map is written in light above you, eternal and unchanging. It is a humbling reminder that when the path ahead seems unclear, we need only look up to find the fixed, guiding principles that silently lead us home through the dark. Ice dams collapse to release oceans of fresh water across the land. These monumental floods did not erase the world, but rather carved new pathways and sculpted the dry canyons that still echo with the memory of the water. The stored energy of the meltwater was unleashed in a singular, majestic event that washed away the debris of the past, scrubbing the bedrock clean. Imagine standing safely on a high basalt cliff, watching a river the size of a sea move through the valley below. The water is thick with silt and ice, moving with a heavy, unstoppable momentum that vibrates deep in the soles of your feet. The roar is a continuous, low-frequency hum that drowns out all other thought, replacing chaos with a singular, flowing focus. It is a humbling reminder that sometimes we must break through our own barriers to let the new energy flow, and that a sudden release can carve out a beautiful, spacious future where there was once only obstacles. Narrow needles allowed the ancient forest to shed the immense weight of snow. While broad leaves withered and fell, The resilient pines kept their green armor, adapting their very shape to let the heavy burdens of the winter slide harmlessly to the ground. They stood as silent sentinels of life, retaining their moisture and color in a world that had turned monochrome and dry. Picture walking into the center of a dense, evergreen grove where the air instantly becomes still and fragrant with the scent of pine resin. The branches above you are bowed low, creating a natural, tent-like shelter that protects you from the falling snow. It is dark and cozy here, a hidden room within the forest where the ground is dry and the wind cannot reach. This reminds us that true strength is not always about bearing the full weight of the world, but about learning how to let what is heavy slide away so that we can remain standing on green through the longest of winters. Migratory birds followed invisible sky paths over the endless miles of ice. Guided by the magnetic pull of the earth and the map of the stars, these travelers refused to let the frozen landscape deter them from their ancient rhythm. They soared high above the glaciers, tiny specks of warm light moving against the backdrop of the eternal cold, trusting entirely in the promise of a destination they could not yet see. Imagine lying on your back in the deep snow, looking up to see a V formation of swans drifting silently across the face of the full moon. Their wings beat in a slow, hypnotic cadence, a soft, rhythmic sound that serves as the only music in the vast night. They are calm and unified, moving as one entity toward the warming south. It is a humbling reminder that even when the ground beneath us feels frozen and impassable, we possess an internal compass that knows the way, and that if we trust our instincts, we will always find our way back to warmth. Immense pressure buckled the ice into jagged, towering ridges of crystal. Where two great flows of the glacier met, they did not stop, but rose together, creating temporary mountain ranges of translucent blue that stood defiant against the flat horizon. These structures were born from conflicting compression, turning the stress of the landscape into a chaotic, beautiful architecture of light and shadow. Picture navigating through a labyrinth of these ice towers, where the walls are sheer and glow with an inner turquoise light. The sun catches the sharp edges of the fractured ice, scattering prisms of rainbows across the snow at your feet. It is a silent, frozen city of glass built by the slow, immense force of the moving world. This reminds us that the pressures we face often elevate us, pushing us to rise and take new, beautiful shapes that we never could have formed if we had simply remained comfortable and flat. The planetary freeze served as a long, restorative sleep for the Earth. Just as we must close our eyes to recover our strength, the world itself required this eon of quiet dormancy to rest its soil and replenish its waters. It was a time of low energy and high preservation where the frenetic pace of evolution slowed down to a gentle, sustainable rhythm. The ice was not a conqueror, but a blanket, tucking the continents in for a necessary slumber. Imagine floating high above the planet in the silence of space, looking down at the globe-wrapped and swirling white clouds and vast sheets of silver ice. The world looks peaceful and still, suspended in a state of grace, breathing slowly in the cosmic dark. There is no noise, only the beauty of a world at rest. It is a humbling reminder that rest is not a waste of time, but an essential part of existence, and that we too are allowed to drift into the deep, quiet winter of sleep to prepare for the brightness of our own coming spring. A deep indigo twilight bathed the world in a soft, monochromatic mystery for hours. In the high latitudes, the sun often hovered just below the horizon, creating a perpetual state of illumination known as the blue hour, where the harsh glare of day softened into a rich, velvety atmosphere. Imagine standing in the center of a snow-covered valley during this extended dusk, where every shadow is painted in shades of violet and deep navy, and the white peaks glow with a faint inner luminescence. The light is cool and calming, smoothing out the rugged edges of the landscape and turning the world into a dreamlike painting of stillness and depth. There is no urgency in this light, only a long, suspended pause between the day and the night. It is a humbling reminder that the most beautiful moments in our lives are often found in the quiet, in between states where we are neither fully awake nor asleep, but simply drifting in a peaceful state of being. Hollow bones were transformed into the first vessels of hunting, melodic expression. In the deep silence of the limestone caves, early humans used the delicate wing bones of vultures and swans to craft simple flutes, piercing them with precise holes to unlock the voice of the wind. Picture a solitary figure sitting by the embers of a dying fire, raising the instrument to their lips to send a soft, trembling note out into the dark. The sound is breathy and dry, echoing off the stone walls like a spirit, mimicking the call of a bird or the whistle of a storm. It cuts through the heavy silence of the Ice Age night, weaving a tapestry of sound that connects the player to the unseen world. It is a reminder that the human soul has always needed to sing, and that even in the deepest isolation, we find ways to turn our breath into beauty and communicate with the silence around us. Ancient moss beds offered a soft, living mattress against the hard frost. Beneath the sweeping winds and the layers of snow, the tundra moss thrived as a masterpiece of survival, a dense, sponge-like carpet that retained heat and moisture even when the air was freezing. Imagine kneeling on the frozen ground and brushing away the dry powder of the snow to reveal this hidden layer of vibrant, resilient green. It feels incredibly soft and yielding under your hand, a warm, organic texture in a world of sharp ice and rock. It holds the memory of the sun in its fibers, waiting patiently for the return of spring to expand and cover the earth once more. It is a humbling reminder that tenderness and softness are not weaknesses, but powerful survival strategies that allow us to endure the harshest conditions by staying grounded and keeping our inner warmth alive. Glacial meltwater offered a taste of absolute, mineral-rich clarity. This was water that had been locked away in a solid state for 10,000 years, preserved in the dark heart of the ice sheet and filtered through the molecular lattice of the glacier. Picture kneeling beside a small, turquoise pool that has formed on the surface of the ice, cupping your hands to lift the freezing liquid to your lips. The water shocks your senses with its coldness, tasting of pure stone and ancient sky, free from any sediment or impurity of the modern world. It rushes through you like a bolt of liquid light, waking up every cell in your body with its pristine energy. It is a direct connection to the deep history of the planet, a communion with the ice itself. This reminds us that true refreshment often comes from the deepest, oldest sources, and that returning to the basics can restore us in ways that nothing else can. The Great Thaw was a slow, majestic release of held breath. As the planet tilted back toward the sun, the ice did not fight the warmth but surrendered to it, turning its solid walls into the rushing rivers that would feed the forests of the future. Imagine standing on a high ridge as the season finally turns, watching the rigid white landscapes soften and begin to move, glistening with the sheen of a million tiny rivulets. The sound of dripping water replaces the sound of the wind, a gentle, rhythmic ticking that marks the passage of time and the return of fluidity. The earth opens up, shaking off its heavy blanket to welcome the sun, transforming the barriers of the winter into the pathways of the spring. It is a humbling reminder that letting go is the natural path to new life, and that every period of frozen stillness is merely a preparation for a beautiful, flowing renewal. Path became a visible, lingering presence in the freezing air. In the extreme cold of the Ice Age, the act of exhaling created immediate, dense fogs of steam that lingered around every living creature, wrapping them in a personal atmosphere of warmth. Imagine standing near a herd of resting bison in the twilight, watching the rhythmic plumes of white mist rise from their nostrils to join the low-hanging fog. The air is so still that the steam does not blow away, but hangs suspended like a soft, white halo around their heavy heads, blurring the sharp outlines of reality. It is a visualization of the life force itself, a warm, white fire burning softly against the backdrop of the blue evening. The sound is a collective rhythmic sigh that calms the nerves. It is a humbling reminder that the evidence of our life is always radiating outwards, and that our very breath has the power to warm the cold space around us just by simply being. Gray ash fell silently from the sky to coat the glaciers. Far away, volcanoes continued their geologic work, sending fine, cool dust into the stratosphere to drift down gently upon the ice, sheets thousands of miles away. Picture a landscape of blinding white suddenly softened by a layer of velvet gray, creating a muted monochrome world that feels quiet and somber. The ash settles into the crevices of the ice, darkening the surface and absorbing the faint heat of the sun, creating a complex, textured pattern of light and dark that stretches to the horizon. It falls with the same gentleness as snow, a dry, soft rain that muffles the world even further. The contrast is stark yet harmonious, emerging of the fire from below and the ice from above. This reminds us that even the opposing forces of nature eventually find a way to rest together in peace, creating a new, quiet balance out of the chaos. Time seemed to stop completely in the heart of the glacier. In the center of the ice sheet, the movement was so slow that it was effectively zero, creating a zone of absolute stasis where the clock of the universe simply ceased to tick. Imagine encasing yourself in this deep, blue stillness, suspended in a medium that is solid yet transparent, held perfectly in place by the weight of the world. There's no decay, no aging, and no change here, only a perfect, crystalline preservation of the moment. The light that filters down to you is ancient and dim, a ghostly blue that calms the mind and slows the heart. You are safe from the rushing river of time, held in a pause that lasts for eons. It is a humbling reminder that there is a deep peace to be found in simply stopping and stepping out of the flow of events to rest in the quiet, suspended animation of the present moment. Fast flowers bloomed on the surface of the new sea ice. As the moisture from the ocean met the sharp cold air, it crystallized instantly into delicate, fern-like structures that grew vertically from the ice, creating a temporary garden of glass. Picture walking across a frozen bay at dawn where millions of these tiny, intricate sculptures catch the first golden rays of the sun. They are fragile and exquisite, forming shapes of impossible complexity that look like white roses or feathery stars scattered across the dark ice. The air is crisp and salty, and the only movement is the slow growth of these crystals as they reach for the light. They exist only for this moment of cold perfection, unbothered by their impermanence. It is a reminder that beauty does not need to last forever to matter, and that the most exquisite things often bloom in the coldest and quietest of conditions. Hard cones sealed with resin protected the forests of the future. High in the branches of the resilient spruce trees, the seeds of the next era whirl locked away inside armored scales, glued shut by amber-colored pitch that defied the frost. Imagine holding one of these cold, hard cones in your hand, feeling the jagged texture of its wooden armor, knowing that a living forest lies dormant inside. It hangs motionless in the winter wind, a tiny suspended vault of life that refuses to open until the conditions are perfect. The tree stands silent and patient, holding its children safe above the snowdrifts, trusting that the warmth will eventually come. It is a quiet, stoic form of hope, perfectly adapted to wait out the dark. This reminds us that we, too, can keep our most precious dreams locked safely away during the hard times, knowing that they will open and flourish exactly when the season is right. Small amphibians performed a biological miracle of suspended animation. In the depths of the freezing woodlands, the wood frog did not flee the cold, but allowed the frost to penetrate its very skin, turning its body into a solid, ice-bound sculpture. Imagine finding one of these tiny creatures nestled under a layer of frozen leaf litter, cold and hard to the touch like a river stone. Its heart has stopped beating, its breath has ceased, and it exists in a state of profound, silent stasis that blurs the line between life and death. It waits there, perfectly preserved by natural antifreeze in its blood, trusting implicitly that the warmth will return to wake it. When the spring sun finally touches the forest floor, the heart quietly resumes its rhythm, beating once more as if no time has passed. It is a humbling reminder that even when our hearts feel frozen and still, life remains waiting within us, ready to awaken with the first touch of warmth. Heady air flowed like water down the mountain slopes. These invisible rivers, known as Caverns icy winds, were born from the intense cold of the high glaciers, the becoming so dense and heavy that they simply fell down the valleys under the pull of gravity. Picture standing at the foot of a great white peak, feeling a constant, steady stream of cold air washing over you, rushing silently toward the sea. It does not gust or howl, but flows with the relentless, heady pressure of a deep river, smoothing the snow into long, streamlined shape. The sensation is one of being bathed in the breath of the mountain itself, a cleansing, cold current that pushes away the stagnant air of the lowlands. It is a reminder that there are invisible forces always flowing around us, guided by the laws of nature, gently pushing us in the direction we need to go. Invisible dust carried the genetic blueprint of the forest. Microscopic grains of pollen were blown by the glacial winds and settled into the mud of remote lake beds, creating a hidden library of plant life that would survive for millennia. Imagine looking through a microscope at a core of ancient sediment, revealing the tiny, intricate sheets of spruce and pine pollen that have been trapped in the dark for an age. They are resilient and tough, waiting in the deep silence of the earth for the chance to germinate, holding the entire potential of a lush, green woodland inside a speck of dust. The Ice Age world seems barren, but beneath the surface, the promise of the forest is everywhere, resting in the soil. This reminds us that even when the landscape of our lives looks empty, the seeds of our future growth are already there, waiting patiently for the right conditions to take root. Deep ocean currents moved with a slow, planetary rhythm. Beneath the surface of the frozen seas, the cooling of the water at the poles created a massive, sinking engine that drove the circulation of the entire globe. This conveyor belt of water moved with a heavy, majestic slowness, taking 1,000 years to complete a single circuit around the Earth. Picture the vast, dark water descending into the abyss, carrying oxygen and nutrients to the deepest parts of the ocean floor, sustaining life in the absolute dark. It is a silent, powerful pulse that connects the equator to the pole, regulating the heartbeat of the world without ever being seen. The movement is steady and unhurried, immune to the storms raging above. It is a humbling reminder that the deepest parts of ourselves move at their own slow, necessary pace, and that this hidden depth is what sustains the balance of our entire being. The first rainfall marked the gentle end of the eternal way. As the climate shifted and the atmosphere warmed, the sky finally released liquid water instead of snow, washing the face of the earth and signaling a new era. Imagine the sound of the first spring rain pattering softly against the retreating ice, a quiet, rhythmic drumming that melts the hard edges of the winter world. The scent of wet stone on liberated earth rises to meet you, a fragrance that feels new and ancient all at once. The rain carves tiny channels in the snow, turning the white into transparency, revealing the dark, sleeping ground beneath. It is a cleansing, restorative shower that washes away the dust of the past. It is a reminder that after a long period of being frozen and held tight, the release of letting go is not a loss, but a beautiful, nourishing transition into a season of growth. The humidity plummeted until the snow fell as dry, shifting dust. In the deep interior of the continent, the moisture was sucked from the air, turning the precipitation into fine, powdery crystals that flowed over the landscape like white sand. Imagine standing on a dune of this dry snow, watching the wind ripple the surface into serpentine patterns that shift and dance with a mesmerizing fluid grace. It does not clump or stick, it simply flows, a river of white particles moving silently across the plains, smoothing over every footprint and imperfection in the land. The sound is a soft, dry whisper, a soothing friction that quiets the mind and erases the past. It is a landscape of constant, gentle reinvention where the surface is always new. It is a humbling reminder that if we remain fluid and adaptable, we can flow through the hardest seasons without being broken by them, reshaping ourselves with every wind that blows. Cave entrances created a sharp, physical divide between chaos and peace. The threshold of these limestone sanctuaries marked the exact line where the intensity of the blizzard ended and the stillness of the earth began. Picture standing just inside the mouth of a deep cavern, looking out at a wall of white swirling snow that moves with force just inches from your face, but cannot touch you. The wind calls with a strong intensity, but where you stand, the air is dead calm and silent, protected by the heavy brow of the rock. You are a witness to the storm, but not a participant held safely in the pocket of the mountain. The contrast makes the safety feel deeper and more profound. It is a reminder that we always have the choice to step out of the storm and into the shelter, and that finding peace is often just a matter of knowing where the boundary lies. Clouds on the horizon mirrored the ice fields beneath them. This phenomenon, known to ancient travelers as ice blink, created a luminous, white glow on the underside of the low clouds, signaling the presence of the frozen ocean long before it came into view. Imagine walking across a dark, rocky tundra and seeing a soft, pearlescent light pulsing on the skyline, a beacon reflecting the vast whiteness that lies ahead. It acts as a natural lighthouse, casting a halo of brightness that guides you towards solid ice, illuminating the path through the great twilight. The sky and the earth are in constant communication, sharing their light to show the way. It is a humbling reminder that even when our destination is not yet visible, there are signs on the horizon reflecting what is to come, guiding us forward with a gentle, glowing promise. Immense friction polished the bedrock into sheets of glass. As the glaciers dragged their heavy load of stones across the earth, they acted as a planetary sandpaper, grinding down the rough mountains until they shone with a mirror-like finish. Picture running your hand over a vast expanse of glacial polish, feeling the cold, slippery surface that is smoother than any man-made table. The stone is cool and solid, reflecting the sky and the passing clouds in its dark, glossy depths. It is a testament to the power of slow, persistent pressure to transform the jagged into the beautiful. The scars of the scraping have become lines of grace, turning the mountain into a work of art. This reminds us that the rough patches in our lives, though difficult in the moment, eventually serve to polish us, wearing away our sharp edges until we are left smooth, resilient, and capable of reflecting the light. The polar winter extended the twilight for weeks at a time. Before the sun fully vanished for the long night, it skimmed just below the horizon, bathing the Ice Age world in a prolonged, deep violet dusk that suspended time. Imagine a landscape where the sun never quite rises but never fully sets, keeping the world in a state of beautiful, dim suspension. The snow glows with a soft, phosphorescent blue, and the first stars hang like silver lamps in a sky that is neither day nor night. The silence is heavy and comforting, a velvet blanket that invites the eyes to close and the body to rest. There's no rush to wake up, only a long, peaceful drift through the shadows. It is a reminder that the darkness is not something to fear, but a necessary, restful pause that allows us to recover our energy before the dawn eventually returns. A single snowflake began its journey from the upper atmosphere in absolute silence. Born from a microscopic dust mote and a breath of vapor, it grew into a complex, six-sided masterpiece of geometry as it drifted slowly down through the miles of still, cold air. Imagine watching this solitary crystal descend against the backdrop of a dark gray sky, turning and tumbling in slow motion, catching the faint light on its faceted edges. It eventually lands gently on the sleeve of a fur coat, resting there for a moment in perfect, frozen clarity, a temporary star made of water that is unlike any other in the history of the world. It sits in fragile perfection, untouched and unmelted, a tiny monument to the unique conditions of the moment. It is a humbling reminder that beauty often lies in the fleeting, singular details, and that even the smallest, quietest things can hold a complexity that commands our wonder. Deep shadows moved across the ice sheets like silent, drifting ships. As the heavy clouds rolled over the sun, they cast vast, dark shapes that raced across the blinding white landscape, creating a dramatic, shifting contrast of light and shade. Picture standing on a high ridge, looking down at the endless white plain as a massive shadow sweeps over it, momentarily dimming the glare and turning the snow a cool, muted gray. The world feels suddenly intimate and enclosed in the shade, only for the cloud to pass in the brilliant, golden light to flood the valley once again. The movement is rhythmic and hypnotic, a silent interplay between the sky and the earth that has played out for eons. This reminds us that periods of darkness are merely passing clouds, temporary shadows that drift over us before the light inevitably returns to warm the landscape of our lives. The ice of the frozen lakes sang a strange, ethereal song in the night. When the temperature dropped sharply, the thick sheets of ice would contract and shift, creating resonant, laser-like pings and deep, hollow sounds that echoed across the valley. Imagine standing on the shore of a vast, frozen reservoir under the moonlight, listening to this acoustic performance rising from the deep. The sounds are not frightening, but musical and clear, like the plucking of giant strings vibrating through the crisp air and humming in the soles of your boots. It is the voice of the water responding to the cold, a sonic reminder that the landscape is alive and reacting to the atmosphere. It is a humbling reminder that even in the deepest silence and the coldest conditions, there is always a song being sung if we are quiet enough to listen for it. A single autumn leaf was trapped in a suspended state of grace. Caught by a sudden freeze in a pool of clear water, the leaf remained locked within the ice, its vibrant maiden gold colors perfectly preserved against the decay of time. Picture looking down into a block of glass clear ice to see the suspended artifact, floating motionless in the center, every vein and serrated edge visible in high definition. It looks as though it is falling, yet it is held fast, a permanent memory of a season that has passed. The ice protects it from the wind and the rot, keeping it safe in a cold, beautiful museum of one. This reminds us that we can hold on to the beautiful moments of our past without letting them weigh us down. Preserving them in our memory is clear, bright beacons of where we have been. The morning sun transformed the frost into a field of scattered diamonds. When the first low rays of light crested the horizon, they hit the millions of ice crystals coating the ground at a precise angle, igniting them into brilliant sparks of prismatic color. Imagine walking through a meadow where the ground seems to be burning with cold fire, flashing with reds, greens, and blues as you move your head. The light is blindingly pure, turning the rugged, frozen array into a landscape of impossible opulence and light. The air is cold, but the visual warmth of the glittering earth fills you with a sense of energy and hope. It is a spectacle of physics and light that turns the ordinary into the extraordinary. It is a reminder that a new perspective and a little bit of light can transform the coldest, hardest situations into something of breathtaking value and beauty. The curvature of their massive tusks served as a natural snow plow. This evolutionary design allowed the woolly mammoths to sweep aside deep drifts of heavy powder, revealing the frozen, nutritious grasses hidden beneath the white blanket. Imagine watching a matriarch gently swing her head in a slow, rhythmic arc, the smooth, stained ivory carving a wide path through the snow with effortless grace. She works patiently in the twilight, her breath rising in warm clouds, clearing the way not just for herself, but for the smaller calves following in her deep footsteps. The sound is a soft, sweeping hush against the silence of the tundra, a rhythmic clearing of the obstacle. It is a humbling reminder that sometimes our greatest strength is used to clear the path for those who follow us, making the journey a little easier through the cold. Fresh snow absorbs sound waves with remarkable efficiency. As the flakes stack loosely upon one another, they create a porous, trapped air structure that swallows noise, instantly dampening the volume of the entire world. Picture standing in the center of a vast pine forest as a heavy snowfall intensifies, watching the world turn white and feeling the silence deepen with every passing second. The usual sharp cracks of branches or the call of birds are muted into a soft, indistinct cotton wool hush, leaving you in a bubble of absolute ringing quiet. It feels as though the earth itself has put a finger to its lips, asking for a pause in the chaos. It is a reminder that silence is not empty, but is a heavy, protective blanket that wraps around us, allowing our minds to finally rest in the absence of noise. The surface of the frozen lakes acted as a perfect, dark mirror. When the wind died down, The ice became a seamless extension of the sky, creating a dizzying, beautiful illusion of infinite space where the stars appeared both above and below. Picture walking out onto this glass-like surface at midnight, feeling as though you are stepping into the cosmos itself. The constellations are reflected with absolute fidelity in the black, ice beneath your boots, surrounding you in a sphere of cold, brilliant light. There is no horizon, only the stars and the silence, holding you in the center of the universe. It is a humbling reminder that when the waters of our mind are still and calm, we become capable of reflecting the infinite beauty that surrounds us, doubling the light in our lives. The atmosphere was scrubbed of all scent and dust. In the deep freeze, the air was cleansed of pollen, smoke, and decay, leaving behind a sterile, exhilarating purity that tasted of ozone and cold stone. Imagine stepping out of a shelter and taking a deep breath, feeling the sharp, clean air fill your lungs with a cooling energy that clears the mind instantly. It is an elemental scent, older than the forests, the smell of high altitude and vast, open space that creates a sense of immediate clarity. The world smells dormant and preserved, waiting in a state of suspended freshness. This reminds us that sometimes we need to strip away the clutter and the noise to find a place of pure, clean simplicity, where we can breathe deeply and start again. The ice flowed like a river moving in ultra-slow motion. Though it appeared solid and immovable to the naked eye, the glacier was a fluid body, sliding downhill under its own colossal weight with a patient, unstoppable momentum. Picture standing on a high peak watching the white river wind through the valley, knowing that it is moving mere inches a year, carving the earth with a quiet, grinding persistence. It does not rush, it reshapes the mountains, turning jagged peaks into smooth valleys over the course of millennia. It is a force of nature that operates on its immense scale far beyond our own. It is a humbling reminder that true power does not always require speed, and that slow, steady progress is capable of moving mountains if we are willing to give it the time it needs. And so, we drift to the end of our quiet journey through the white silence. We have wandered across the frozen bridges of time and rested within the warm, hidden caves of the ancient world. We have witnessed the majestic patience of the glaciers and the quiet resilience of life waiting beneath the snow. This frozen epic teaches us that stillness is not an absence of life, but a necessary, protective pause. Just like the sleeping earth, you are allowed to rest deeply, retreating into your own winter to conserve your energy, knowing that the warmth will always return to you in its own perfect time. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. There is nothing left for you to do now. The history is written, and the world is at peace. Just breathe. Let your shoulders drop, and let your eyes grow heavy, sinking into the soft darkness. Let the vast, quiet memory of the ice sage cradle your dreams, wrapping you in a blanket of safe, eternal white. Good night.